I'm Rick Claus. I am a senior technology evangelist. In case you haven't realized by now, I am the Canadian, or one of the many Canadians that are here from the Canuck crew, and I proudly have my flag on stage, normally inside my hat, so if you ever want to talk about whatever you like, come on down and stop me and talk, and let's have a chat. Today's agenda is going to be a little bit accelerated, so hang on to your seats and hang on to your hats if you're wearing one. I'm going to be talking specifically around get out of Dodge. What are you doing still on 2003 servers for your infrastructure? Don't worry, almost everybody is, because if you're in this room, you probably are on 2003 and you want to know how to get off it and why it's the way to go. I'm going to talk about a company you guys probably know called Contoso. Everyone heard of that? Do you guys know there's actually like a legal requirement we have to use Contoso at Microsoft presentations because we own that domain name and stuff and intellectual property to it? I found that out a little while ago. It's kind of interesting. And then the whole premise of the session is about demos, demos, and demos. And so I'm going to have to go at speed to be able to do stuff. If there is a chance that I'm going to be going over, I might just very well go over a little bit, but I also might end up having to skip a demo, so then, in which case I will make sure that it is screencasted correctly and put up on a blog for you guys to see. And because this is all about learning and education, I'm also going to be making sure you guys walk out of here with an action plan to be able to go ahead and action some of the stuff that we're there and doing today at TechEd in 2011 in Atlanta. My favorite quote from talking about upgrades and migrations, I'm an infrastructure guy, I've been a server hugger for a very long time. You know, I did this Active Directory thing last year, and I toured across Canada with it as well and talked to a bunch of people, and they said, you know what, the rest of my infrastructure I need help with. How do I move my file servers? How do I move my DHCP systems? Like, these core building blocks of my infrastructure have been there forever, and I don't want to touch them. I don't want to move them up, and I just want to leave them as they are. And really, it came down to, if I had a dog when I deployed my infrastructure, he'd be dead by now, because it was 11 or more years since you deployed your DHCP server with multiple scopes. I heard someone scooped my joke and used a cat, but you have to use dog because of the lifetime for dog years to cat years, because I have a 22-year-old cat at home who's still around. So really, with 11-year-old infrastructure, you're looking at very antiquated hardware that's running, or else it's been, you know, I don't know, imaged and moved over, something like that. Picture of my server room back in the turn of the century. That's hilarious, turn of the century, eh? Planning on how to get from that lovely Windows NT4 all the way up to that cutting-edge 2000 server family and other things like this. I probably had a Nokia phone that only had 9 buttons on it, and that's about it at the time. Or actually, you know what? That was probably the time of the StarTAC. Do you guys have the StarTAC flip-downs with the big triangular battery? Hello? Those ones were good as far as a nice, reliable phone. But really, it comes down to the customer motto. If it ain't broke, I ain't going to touch it, because I don't want to break it and incur more work on my part. Is that a fair assumption? Absolutely. We're all IT pros. This is what we do, right? So really, the projects that they were working on, generally speaking, were put together, you implemented it, you got it working, and then you kind of moved on to something else for the bulk of the people that I've talked to over the last while. And so the scenario for this basically is we're going to pretend we're looking at a bank that are running Active Directory right now, that they're currently in the process of doing an upgrade to Active Directory 2008 R2 because they saw my fantastic session last year and they really want to go ahead and use some of those new things you can do at 2008. They've got regional offices, they've got Active Directory integrated DNS, but most importantly down there, they've got DHCP, they've got file and print, and they've got certificate services, and they don't want to have to worry about that sort of stuff breaking. Most importantly, at the very bottom, no funds for consulting. So you guys are the ones responsible for doing all the work. You all on board? Okay, so the challenges that we have at this particular organization, well, obviously I'm pretty sure that no one's gone and given you an extra 3 hours to your 24-hour day. And I'm also pretty sure that you like to have a life outside of work and spend time with your friends, your family, your game console, your pets. Maybe that dog is 11 years old, who knows? You got some time constraints. But also, with these days, the budgetary cuts that are on, the project status being not officially recognized as something that's a priority to do, that sort of stuff can end up clouding your issues and getting buy-in to be able to go. Maybe potentially you're still working in an environment like a lot of us are, where the IT department is still really kind of seen as this big black pit of money and not viewed by the rest of the business as a valuable business unit that's contributing back to the environment. And you know, I actually was a very big fan of this when I was a consultant before joining Microsoft. The whole concept of the maturity model for where you sat. Like how much were you automated? How much did you document? How much did you leverage things like group policy to simplify your life? What about your software deployment mechanisms? What about your patching mechanisms? All that kind of adds up to the level of automation and maturity that you happen to have. In this case, we're down at the very level of basic level, which is actually where most people are these days. A little bit more people are moving up to standardized for the most part, but it's a slow, long grind to get up to that level. So when we talk about an in-place upgrade or a migration, geez, I mean, I'm going to be using these servers that haven't been touched in a long time. Lots of different services I have to worry about moving and working with them. And a migration means you're going to actually take an existing server and then you're going to go in and take a new computer with a brand new clean install and then put on your operating system on top of that and then go ahead and then migrate the data over. An in-place upgrade, on the other hand, actually replaces the bits on the disk, upgrades it, and then allows you to continue to work and function, hopefully fine, with those individual services. So, you know, I'm more of a fan of the migration as opposed to in-place. Who here is an in-place type of person? Anybody? 2, 3, 4. 4 in-placers. Have you guys seen the video about going from Windows 1 all the way to Windows 7 that's on YouTube right now? We kept the shortcuts on the desktop. That's how backwards compatible we are. But sometimes that just doesn't work for a server. And so the rest of you, everybody put up your hand. Come on. You're all migration people. Come on, up hands. There we go, there we go. Good. Interactions, good. Makes it a little bit more interesting. So really when it comes down to it, you don't actually have a choice. Because if you're an x86 shop right now with your server OS 2003, you don't have an in-place upgrade option. Why? 64-bit only for 2008 R2 OS. You cannot run 64-bit install binaries on a 32-bit system, so you're SOL for being able to do that. You have to look at doing a migration. You can't really do an upgrade. If you're in the environment where you actually were cutting edge and you deployed 2003 R2 64-bit, yeah, it's a little bit easier, but still, we're going to be talking about this specifically from an upgrade method. So the benefits of migration, the best part is simply it's a transition path from x86 to x64. You could also look at seizing the opportunity because it's a new box to go virtual as opposed to physical, which is the way a lot of places are going. I'm a huge advocate, even though I am a server hugger, to go to virtualization as a platform. And then full server to server core is another option. I'll be talking actually and eating my own dog food using server core for my destination targets as much as possible. You guys using server core as your primary first level choice for your operating systems out there? Put up your hands if you are. Who are the brave people? Not a lot of people. You guys are aware of the reduced number of patches and smaller attack footprint and all that sort of stuff we can talk about with core. If you dabbled in core before and you didn't look at it since 2008 R2, it's gotten a lot better for being able to manage and configure it if you're used to the GUI environment to be able to manage it or the command line environment to manage it. As I mentioned, I'm going to be eating my own dog food and using core for my destination systems. Clean operating system installs to me always means, for the most part, more chances of stability because you're not carrying over the garbage of Windows 1.0 all the way up into your operating system. Reduces your risk in downtime. You can back out. You can leave the old systems as they were and fire them back up again. I'm a big guy, as you can see from what happened in here for disaster recovery. And so I really heavily believe in being able to have a good documentation and a backup and restore solution. So the question becomes, I mean, there was a couple of people here that said that were involved in a migration project and migration options. Who here is looking at moving up to 2008 R2 servers? And everybody should put your hand up in the room unless you just like my really bad Canadian jokes. So why aren't you doing it right now? Like, it's been out for a couple of years. They won't buy CALs. Can't help you there. Pardon me? Third-party stuff, not supporting it. Certified options on different things. Well, you know, this is other options that came across my chats with other people. Lack of time, too worried about keeping the lights on my systems, lack of expertise, I'm not comfortable with it just yet. Waiting for Service Pack 1, can't use that one anymore. But really, these ones came out a lot. I'm just, quite frankly, overloaded with too much other stuff. I'm overwhelmed with all the rest of the work that I have to do, and really, I don't know where to start. So by being here, you're in the right spot. I'm at least going to give you access to all the tools that are free. I'll give you access to all the reference material that I use to build the entire session. You have access to the slides, you have access to the video, and on top of that, I'll also be able to point you off to our area where you can take a look at a very high-res detailed look instead of the small compressed screen for the demos when we get done for where they happen to sit. So basically, we're here to help to make sure you guys are up to date on the latest and greatest operating system that's there for your servers, because it will end up making your life easier down the long run. And so when you're looking at doing migration, you type in Server 2008 R2 migration, enter. You're hopefully going to be able to find a nice article or landing place for all the resources you need to have around how to do this, and I'll point you to those articles specifically. You're also going to find links to blogs. You're also going to be able to find tools and scripts to help you out. All that happens to be there. So to be able to find this, very simply, use your favorite search engine called Bing. Type in TechNet Migration Portal, and you'll find the first two links. Or you can just type in Microsoft.com/migration, and I'll save you the Bing search. I like that sound, Bing. So the migration process. First off, everybody, once again, please raise your hand and repeat after me. I promise. Come on, let's go. I promise. I will do my due diligence and my planning before starting this process. I will not try to do this upgrade in 75 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, so basically what we've got is, besides the guidance, we also have a whole whack of different utilities, scripts, documentation, as well as PowerShell command lists to get stuff done. And they're all free to use. Yes, there are definitely third-party solutions that you can use that make it a lot easier to be able to do this. Quest Software comes to mind as one example. There's many more that are out there. But basically, you don't need to have those solutions if you can follow along with what I'm going to be able to do. The supported scenarios, I'm not going to bother going through them, but basically it goes x64, x86 to x64. You can move all the core infrastructure that I'm talking about today. You can also go in and do some branch cache as well. And it moves local users, groups, IP addresses, computer names, data, and shares all for you. It's very, very cool. So don't redesign your environment that you're moving to the exact same way, your old way. This is your time to make change. That's why I'm suggesting you look at using Server Core. You look at using virtual. Use tools that are going to make your lives easier once it's done. And think about how you can do this process so that it's not going to be maximized or impacting your individual users. So, insert diagram of reference network for Contoso. There it is. So what we've got... We've got our, I did this last night to make sure it's done on time. I've already got my 2008 R2 domain controller up in the top left-hand corner with the happy face on it. All of my 2003 boxes at the top there have file and print, DHCP, and also certificate services on them. I'm going to move them down, that's what those arrows mean, down to 2008 R2 core installs with file and print temporary, DHCP temporary, and cert temporary being used. And I'm going to be validating all this works with my Windows 7 box. Here's my plan that I sat down with after a couple of beer to write out exactly what we needed to do for the order. And the first one was read up and plan. So we all promised we're going to do that. So that one's good. The install tools are next. We have to actually go off and be able to install the install tools and get them all happy and going on my different systems. And so to do that, let's go ahead and take a look. The basic step-by-steps, what we need to do. Basically, you need to go in and get the install tool files and features from your 2008 R2 boxes. You already have your R2 boxes installed as member servers. You're then going to go in and generate a deployment share off of one of those boxes, and then go ahead and run some utilities called SMS MIG deploy that I'll be showing you. And then you go into the target server, the source server to start, so your 2003 box, and you make sure you got enough disk space, install the .NET Framework, install PowerShell, copy the files down, and then register them so that they all go off and work. So you know what? Enough talking. Let's get going and do this. Cross your fingers. C. A, B, C. There we go. It's a little small. We'll work on that, and we'll go from there. As you can see, we're in a virtualized environment. All my boxes are up and running. The first thing I need to do is let's go off and get those install tools. To do that, I'm going to go off to my 2008 box. And of course, my resolution is messed up on him now. So let's go and connect back up to him again. 2008 R2, where are you? The nice thing with this is it really is just a matter of having to go in and load a new feature off of my box to be able to do the management tools for Windows features. And let's go authenticate, please. I don't care that I can't contact the search server for now for this guy. There we go. Well, yeah, it's pretty small. We'll go with what we can. I got Zoom it to be able to make it so you can all go off and see what's going on. So first off is I'm going to be using PowerShell to be able to launch this. You guys can see the PowerShell command prompt reasonably well. So first off is import module server manager into my manager. There we go. I need to add the snap-in, which is, or add the Windows feature, sorry. And the feature is called Migration. Pretty simple. I love the, ooh, I'm doing something. While that's loading, I'm going to go down here and load an elevated command prompt to be able to have access to those files. Basically what it does is it copies them down to System32, Server Migration Tools. And I'm going to go off and type in the command to register them and make them work within PowerShell. Smig deploy is the utility. And I want to go off and create something called a package. And I need to identify the architecture. Now, what architecture is 2003? x86 or x64? You got it. x86. And it's x86. I need to choose the OS, which is Windows Server 03. I need to choose a path where I want to dump them. And I want to dump them to c:\source, just to put them someplace. There we go. That's done. Now, he's done. PowerShell I can leave there for a moment. Go back down here to csource. And let's just make this easy to get access to. And I'm going to say share it with the administrators group on my box, because administrators are going to be the ones doing the actual migration itself. All I've done is I've installed the Server Manager snap-in, sorry, the module. I've added the feature of migration, which is simply going to the control panel and adding the different features from the role manager. I've elevated a command prompt to be able to load the server tools, extract them, and share them out on a share called source. That is my prep work, and I've now got to go and install those tools at the remote sites, or at the remote servers I want to go off and manage. So the first one I'm going to manage is my DHCP system, which is this guy right here. Also the wrong resolution. Okay, so this is a 2003 box running DHCP. I'm just going to go off here and simply say, how do we get PowerShell on 2003? Well, there are some prerequisites. The first prerequisite is I have to go off and install .NETFX or .NET. I'm doing the bare minimums. I wouldn't recommend you install .NET 2.0 on your box, but that's the minimum requirements for PowerShell. So I'm just going with the minimums. And then I'm going to go off and actually install PowerShell, which is a download that I've already done. It requires the .NET runtime to be able to work. While that's going, I'm going to go and copy over the files, because it's going to take a little while to copy. So come over here, and let's go to my server, which is W2K8R2DC is my domain controller. I shared out source. And these guys right here is the folder that gets created by that package extraction. It's pretty obvious that it's for a server OS 03 with x86. So I'm just going to copy those guys down to my C source directory so I know where they are. .NET Framework's almost done. Almost done. In which case, I'm just going to go ahead and launch off my PowerShell install right after that. Oh, .NET. .NET. How fast are you? So we're doing DHCP as our first target for the service we're going to move. DHCP has some requirements that you're going to have to be aware of when we do that migration. I'm just setting up the tools right now on the source and on the destination server to be ready for it. One of the things you have to be aware of for DHCP is the fact that you have to have the same number of NICs on the source and destination boxes. You don't have to have the same MAC addresses, you don't have to have the same IP addresses. We'll worry about that a little bit later on. You don't have to worry about the fact that you've already got leases, you've already got reservations, you've already got leases created and reservations in place and options in place. It'll handle moving that over for you with this tool that I'm going to be using, which is based on PowerShell. So that was my .NET requirements. This is my PowerShell install right here. Good question. Could I have more NICs on the target box than on the source? The answer would be yes. You can't go the other way around. As you'll see when I do the install for the destination or the destination machine, I literally match up source MAC address with destination MAC address, and that's how it knows what binding order to go with for the different pieces. Good question, though. Okay, almost here, almost done. Installing PowerShell. Again, another free download. Links to get it are in the notes at the end of the session. PowerShell is something that I started using about 1.5 years ago. I'm a scripter, batch file kind of guy myself, but I've been slowly learning the powers that are PowerShell as an essential skill to be able to do. Downside is I'm a horrible typer, so it makes it so that it becomes rather interesting to make sure that all the demos are all happy and ready to go. Okay, so the .NET-FX was installed, PowerShell was installed. Let's actually go off and get those tools up and running here. Very simple to do. Let's change in the source into my funky directory. That's that guy right there. And it's called smig deploy is all I need to basically do to be able to launch off and do this install. Very simple. Go. Does the install, registers PowerShell, fires it up. And then I'm actually going to close off this instance of PowerShell for just a moment because I want to show you this one instead. So over here, under Administrative Tools, it actually created a subfolder called Windows Migration Tools. And inside there is the PowerShell prompt that I'm going to launch and use. And to make it so you guys can see, because it's such a really crappy resolution with our setup, I'm just going to go in here and change the properties so you guys can actually see it at the back of the room as best we can. There we go. A little bit better to be able to see what's going on. Okay, so I've installed the tools on the GUI interface, 2003 box, pretty simple. How about on a Core box? Is there GUI installs on Core? No. Absolutely not. Correct. So how do we do it on a Core box? Well, it's a little bit more tricky, but it's not all that difficult. Just again, this is our lovely graphical interface for Core. And what I did is, because I'm horrible at typing, I made 3 text files to help me. For one called Migration Tools on Core. Again, I'll make this particular text file available to you if you're interested. So first off, let's move these over here so you can see them both. I'm going to go off here and simply say load the OC setup for .NET-FX, or .NET, PowerShell, Server Manager, commandlets, all that sort of stuff. Launch him. And that's the first part of the install process as he finishes that off. And he comes back with a great descriptive prompt of nothing. Next up, I'm going to go off and load the new option for Server Migration Tools with an OC setup. I say edit and paste, enter, and there we go. While that's going, I'm now going to go in and say launch PowerShell, and then import the module for Server Manager to be able to manage services all from the command prompt. So I'm just going to go down here and say start PowerShell. Change the prompt so you guys can see it. Green with a larger font at the back. There we go. So this is the PowerShell prompt. You can tell because it's got PS, obviously. And then PowerShell's off and running. This is my next one here, which is simply import module Server Manager to be able to load server management within PowerShell. Edit, paste. Another great descriptive prompt comes out of there. And the last one is add in the feature for migration. Paste it. And then finally, If I can find my notepad file, there it is. The last guy is simply add in the snap in for this. Don't worry, I don't do copy and paste all day. It's just for these longer ones that I got to do it for. There we go. Close that guy off. One more paste. And there we go. Okay. So that was the first part. I installed the tools, I extracted them, I shared them out off my main server, that's 2008 R2, that's where I got the source files from. I then went into my destination server and my source server and installed PowerShell and installed the migration tools commandlets to be able to go. That has to be duplicated on all your other destination systems and your other target systems. I've saved time and done them already for the rest. You only had to see this once to see what it's like, to make it a little bit more palatable to go through. PowerPoint. So, from a server migration perspective, these are the command lines that you are able to run with PowerShell. I'm not going to go into details because I'm going to go off and use them. Very simple. Get features that can be migrated. Export settings, import settings, the two I'm going to be using a lot. And then the cool one at the very end is send data and receive data for doing data transfer between two systems in encrypted fashion for file copy process. So here's our checklist. We just did the planning. We just did the install of tools. So next up, let's go ahead and do our Active Directory design rollout project and finish that off. Well, as I mentioned, I'm pressed for time, so please, if you would, do a search for Rick Claus WSV330 on Bing. Grab yourself a coffee or a pint. Sit down and watch it, not 75 minutes long, to be able to figure out how to do your Active Directory migration. You'll get a lot of benefit by going 2008 R2, and I walk you through the entire thing. So we're done that one there. Let's go down to the actual part, which I'm going to talk about now, which is DHCP, and how to do DHCP migration. Worrying about client leases, worrying about scopes that already exist, and worrying about other things like that for different pieces. So for the pre-migration tools, make sure, as I mentioned already, that the number of NICs are equal or greater on the destination. On the source, you run a backup process. You install the migration tools, you register them. I've done those two steps already. You stop the service. On the destination, you install the operating system, already done, join the domain, and then also go in and install the tools and stop the service, and then proceed to migration. So let's actually show that to you as opposed to making you wait for all of that. So on my demo, there it is. On my, if I can see here, way up here, this is my core box, which is my destination machine. I've already got PowerShell installed. I've already got Server Manager up and running inside my PowerShell environment, as you can see right here with this, right? I've already got the migration features in there. I need to install DHCP. To be able to do that from within Server Manager, I just need to go in here and say Add Windows Feature called DHCP. Ooh, it installs. I then say, give me the status of that service to see if it's up and running yet. DHCP server. It is currently stopped, which is exactly the way that I want to have it. I'm going to leave it like that. It's not serving out addresses. It's completely blank, but simply installed as far as binaries are concerned. Down here to my regular DHCP server that's currently in production and working. I have my PowerShell tools that are up there and working. I have them already all set to go. And from there, I'm going to go in and actually show you the DHCP system to show you what I have set up. So I've got my corp.contoso.com. Man, I hate the fact that I'm not full screen. It is killing me right now. In here, I can expand it, take a look. My scope already exists. As you can see, I've got a scope. And if I expand that off, I've got an address pool of a very simple 99 addresses or so. I've got leases that are already going out to people, and scope options. I've got stuff in there. So basically, it's live, it's working, it's happy and good, and serving up stuff to my people right now. I'm going to go off here, very simply put, and say, you know what? Let's go in and say, back up my system. To keep it someplace where I know where it is, because this is a demo environment, I'm going to drop it inside my source directory and call it DHCP backup. That's just in case I screw everything up based on how my resolution is working today. I'm glad I'm doing backups. That's my configuration settings for my scope, my zone, my leases, and everything else for where that happens to be. For my configuration of stuff. And then now, to actually go ahead and bring those servers and systems out using PowerShell, I'm going to use that export command. Export SMIG data for server migration data. And the feature that I want to export is called DHCP. I want to also migrate out all users. I want to migrate any groups because DHCP puts some groups in there, groups, there we go. Group, I need to migrate the IP configuration. I also need to go through and migrate out the path to store this, which is a temporary storage server that I've created. Very simple, it's just a file share, and give me a verbose settings. And I typed it out, FEA. Feature ID. You see why I use text files as opposed to typing? There we go. Now, the migration tool will always ask you for a password because it stores this as a single binary file that it locks and encrypts that no one else can see. So it's okay to put it onto a share to be able to have this in there. So remember what that password is. It's going to go off and pull up all the information that needs to have, all the users, all the groups, all the group memberships, all the scope settings, all the MAC addresses they're bound to, all that sort of stuff is going to be dumped inside this one file. I then am going to go in and bring that in on the other side. Pretty simple. But why did I care about this little parameter right here while it's going, which is this guy? Oops, I meant to do a line. Why is that important? Think of DHCP servers. What's important for a DHCP server, the computer name or its IP address? It's IP address. So I want the IP address migrated from that box to the new box as part of this process, and the tool does that. Other ones I'll be worried about names, like file and print servers, but for now I just cared about the IP address to be able to make this guy off and go. So he's done, he's saved it, it's all good. The other thing I need to worry about here is going off and activating and deactivating this, or authorizing and deauthorizing this server. So here, to deauthorize someone, in case you didn't know, it's netsh, and it's DHCP is the tool you have to use to go in there. I want to say delete server, and then full name, contoso dhcp.corp.contoso.com with the IP address of 192.168.10.50. And that's normally what you would do through a GUI command line to be able to do it. Now, how do I know the MAC address of this box and save it for my script that I need to be able to use in a little bit of time? Very simple. Good old ipconfig/all. I'm just going to pipe that to a file that I'm also going to store in the same directory. Hyper-V-1 migration data DHCP, and I'm going to call it ipconfig.txt, just to keep it nice and simple. There we go. And then lastly, shutdown/s/t5 to make him go away, because I don't want to have him open anymore, because he is now useless to me. What could I do to bring him back again? Pretty simple. I simply reauthorize that machine and boot him back up again, right? So that's my backup plan, because that's documented for my backup plan for that. Now, for the import side of things, back over here on my DHCP temporary server, which is all command line server core stuff, what do I have to do? Well, I got to make sure that I've got my server manager migration commandlets all running, which I do. Migration, I've got the snap-in working for migration. He's all good. I've added the feature for there. I need to know its IP address, ipconfig/all, for its MAC address, which I need right there. Then I'm going to go in and use the command line notepad tool for, which one is it? Import dhcp.txt. So this lovely command right here. Import the SMIG server settings. The feature is DHCP, all users, the groups as well, ipconfig as well, all the settings, the source MAC address. So that is inside my text file, right? So my text file is notepad hyper-v/1 migration data dhcp ipconfig.txt. And this is my source address for Mac that I need to worry about. Copy, close him off, over here, and paste to get out of him. And this guy here is the next one. Edit, mark my text for the source, destination, sorry, and then paste, which is right here, and then paste it, and then copy all of that. There's a typo there, let's copy all that. And then I just run this from within my PowerShell window, because I know that I'm not going to be able to type that correctly. Look at that, that's massive. Run that guy there, what's the password? Password, bring him in. And he's going to go in and bring him in. I'm going to show you the log for what he does when he brings it in. Now, besides that, I need to now go off and authorize him. I'm going to do the same process to authorize him, the netsh, DHCP. I'm going to say add server, full name, IP address of the new box, and off we go. I'm not going to change the DHCP server's name from Contoso-DHCP-T for temporary to something else because that would just complicate the demo, but you obviously could if you need to adhere to your own naming conventions. What will happen here when it comes in is you'll see the verbose down at the bottom all of a sudden scroll up with this big slew of information. And I'll show you the part that I want to show that's the most important to see if it worked correctly in just a moment when it comes. And that gives me a chance to have a breath and a water. I'm then going to go in and show you with the Win7 client that I can go in and look at DHCP, see all the settings, and use my remote admin capabilities on that box from Server Core to try to alleviate your fears for managing and working with Server Core. Because if you have Win7 box, your domain joined, and you've got RSAT tools on there with Service Pack 1, you can do it all from your Win7 box beautifully without having to worry about terminal servicing in. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention, notice how this guy isn't spinning anymore? The reason why is because I've changed my IP address, right? Because I ask it to migrate my IP address. So I'm going to go in here and say View Full Screen, Control-Alt-Enter, and log on to the DHCP box, and then you should see the finished result. So this is the same box, just that it's now a different IP address, so my terminal server session cacked out on me. And you can see up at the very top here, where is it? DHCP administrators is a group that it created. DHCP users, another group that it created. And then more importantly, at the very bottom here, as I show you this, you've got DHCP is for IPv4 for particular areas turned off, but I have the starting address, the ending address, DNS server, all sort of stuff basically was brought in and working correctly. So that's all good. netsh. DHCP, add server, and this guy is called Contoso DHCP t.corp.contoso.com with the IP address of 192.168.10.50 is the address that he had on that box. He's now been added. So to validate that this worked, because I'm all done with him, close him off, bring up Windows 7, and take a look at him from a Windows 7 perspective. I have the RSAT tools installed, so I can go over here to DHCP, and I can go off and choose Manage Authorized Servers, and look at that. So there's my guy, there's the address, everything's good. Say OK to manage them, take a look at them. What did I call them off, turn them off? So this whole resolution thing is freaking me out. I'm missing a step. Thank you very much for the gentleman with what sounded like an Australian accent. Oi, oi, oi. Quit. PowerShell's the easiest way to do it. Where she be? There it is. Start service. Start service DHCP server. They call you on it, right? The Aussies always call you on it. You missed a typo. You what? Warning, 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 warning. Good to go. There we go. Now let's take a look at Win7. A little refresh there. Oh, look. Magically, it works. And if I bring this guy over so you guys can actually read this, there's my scope. It's created. It's called production. There's my scope options at the bottom for all the different stuff that used to be there. It's all still there. Most importantly, address leases. Look at that. All the leases are still valid. They're all still good for all my client systems of 5,000 machines all using DHCP. No interruption in service for the most part for that guy to be able to use that individual service. Phew. Thank you. Thank you. Come on, you can encourage me, please. It's going to be a long day if you don't. Okay, so we did DHCP. We're good. If you need to roll back, you can troubleshoot it. You simply have to bring the box back up again, take the other guy back down. You have to reauthorize them, and then if it's working, get rid of the old box, format them, delete them, do whatever you want, and you're all done. So we finished DHCP. Next up is print servers. How do we do print servers? Well, in this case, it's a little bit interesting. Because we actually have to worry about files. We're not going to be using the PowerShell command list because the print manager has the ability to do migration of print servers. However, there are caveats, and I'm going to tell you what the caveats are to make it so it works for your environment. Because I got stuck and burnt when I was doing a migration process trying to make it work with other tools, and it just wasn't working for me. And I figured out what it was. So it's very, very simple. It's a mix of tools to be able to get this guy to go. Interestingly enough, it's going to be mostly all remote for how we're going to be doing this. So my 2008 box is where I'm going to start. I'm going to go in and install my role for Print Manager. Thank you. Install the tools, which is simply the print server. Nothing else fancy required. That gives me the binaries to be able to go off and manage print servers remotely on my server box. Next up, when he's done, I'm just going to close off my real estate here to make it so you guys can see what's going on a little bit better. For print management, under administrative tools, or you know what? Where is he? Print management. There we go. So, make it so you guys can see it a bit better. I've got one print server right now, which is my existing box, which has no actual printers. I need to go in and add in another box for print servers, and that's my existing box, which is called Contoso FP1. Add them in. And then Contoso FP1, if I take a look at him, look at the drivers that he has. Is that going to work for me? I need 64-bit drivers for the servers as well as for the clients potentially with 64-bit systems. That's the first caveat. You basically have to go in and add in the drivers for 64-bit on the source before you move them over. So make sure you uncheck the x86 and check the x64, just like I did right there. Pretty simple. And then go in here and say, have disk to point to your driver files, because you guys all know where your driver files for every single printer you have inside your environment is, right? Come on, work with me. Source, printers, and I've got my 64-bit drivers for my HP box. That's the first guy he's now brought in. And let's go and bring the other driver in as well. Only 64-bit. The question is, could I script that if I was using PowerShell? And the answer is yes, with a combination of WMI stuff, but beyond the scope of this particular session. But yes, you could. Another question there is there's global drivers. I'm actually using the global HP drivers. I'm not a fan of them personally, but they do work. I prefer the individual drivers, but for the purpose of this demo, it's going to be fine for being able to do this. Again, your mileage may vary based on your printer manufacturer for being able to have 64-bit and 32-bit drivers for the different printers that you have. So obviously, if we're talking about a massive print server with hundreds of print SKUs, this will migrate just as well as it's going to be migrating these two on the different system. So I've got the drivers installed on the source. I'm going to go in very simply here and say, you know what, save this to a file, which is known as export. So it says, okay, here's what I see. I've got my two printer queues that are running. These are all the drivers that are on my system, 64-bit included. These are my processors. Let's go off and use this. Where do I want to store them to? Temporary storage location. Hyper-V-1 again, because I'm simple for doing this. Migration data printers. Let's go in and do it this way instead. There we go. And then let's call it printers for the name of the file. So as you can see, I'm storing the file up on my server. And I'm calling the name printers for my storage file. Goes ahead and basically extracts everything, including jobs currently in queue and drivers, and basically hangs on to it all for you until you're ready to be able to import them in on that side. Is this using PrintMig in the background? There's a GUI front end. I actually don't know the answer to that question. I was using the GUI one just to make it simple because I figured you guys would be tired of command line all the time. You could absolutely use other migration tools as well, like PrintMig. I've never tried it though, I'll be honest. Okay, so we've got them stored. Now I'm going to go off to my temporary print server, which is this guy right here. And all he is a core box. So I got to go in and install printing. So that's a start OC setup, printing, server core role. When that guy finishes, that's the only thing I need to do on that one box. I'm going to do the rest of it from the other side. There we go. So the printing services are installed. Now here's the caveat that comes up in the documentation when you do the reading on how to do this, because you're all going to plan on how to be able to do this, right? The thing you have to worry about is that it installs the binaries. It does not initialize the spooler. It does not initialize the print shares to be able to do stuff. So you actually have to go back to the remote box, like I just did here, add in the new print server that I just added, which is Contoso-FP1T for my temporary box. I then need to go in and install a new printer on him. So I'm just going to go off here and say add a printer. I'm doing this remotely. You can do this with firing off and registering a DLL on the core box command line if you wanted to. It's really nasty. So this way here is actually easier. It's going to time out first because it's trying to attach up to the administrative shares which don't exist yet. It also is trying to tie up to the print queues which don't exist yet either. It's going to time out and let me install a new one. So I'm going to install a bogus printer for the sole purpose of initializing that box to be the destination recipient of all that printer data that I already stored once. Let's go timeout. Let's go timeout. If you're sneaking off, not that I'm picking on you, sir, for leaving, please remember to do a nice evaluation about how fantastic these demos were with the presenter skills to be able to handle any situation possible that comes up, including video resolution. Thank you very much, sir. Come on, timeout. Let's go. Let's go. Any other questions while we're waiting? Because I have some timeout time to fill. I can do a soft shoe if you like. At the back corner with the ball cap. Nice hat. Migrating 32-bit printers to 64-bit servers is that you have to start from scratch. This will actually do 32-bit and 64-bit drivers and print stuff to the server, as you'll see in just a moment. So it'll load both drivers to the system. To do the migration, you do have to have a 64-bit driver installed that matches it. Otherwise, it does fail. But it'll work both for 32-bit and 64-bit systems. Hang on to your questions, because now we're back to time constraints. I'm just going to install a junk printer. I don't care where it's actually attached. To keep it simple, I'm actually going to use the same source for my drivers, although it's not required. I'm going to call this guy HP test. And this guy here, HP test, just for fun. And it's going to give me a lovely error message, which is supposed to be there. So you can't mark in the evals that the demos didn't work, because it's supposed to be there. And then we come back over here and say, okay, the error is expected. I'm going to right-click on this guy here and simply say import from file. I'm going to point back to the location where I stored it on the system, right? Same location, same file that I did in the previous steps. That's the guy. He's going to parse it and see what's there. He sees both 32-bit and 64-bit drivers for two different print queues that are on the system. And it's going to ask me, do you want to keep the existing printers? Well, you know what? I want to overwrite them because I just made a junk printer on that destination, so I don't care about it. And then if I publish my printers manually, I will have to republish them again. If it's able to be done automatically because the driver supports it, you're good. I'm just going to say don't bother listing them because this is a demonstration environment. Just go ahead and do it. It also is going to throw a warning, which I'll show you what the warning is at the end. But everything will work at the end. The warning is basically warning me that, hey, the language for the printer that you chose, the language files, are 32-bit, and you're trying to migrate 64-bit on the destination only. You need to resolve that. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. But here's my warning message. The important part is when you take a look at your event viewer, you don't get any big warning, big red marks. So there we go. There's one red mark right there that simply says, as I mentioned, the language monitor in the particular backup is different. So just be aware of that. That's fine. It's not going to be a showstopper for how my event viewer is going to work and how my printer is going to work. So how do I know if this actually worked? Let's go back here. Again, I'm on my server. If I simply do a very simple here, CLS, net, view, my two servers, Contoso FP1, and then Contoso FP1T. You can see I have print and disk on the original and only print on this guy. So that tells you that my next step for my demo is going to be how do we get my print and files also on the same box. And you are correct in assuming that. So moving right along. We've got our printers done. Last two steps. We got file servers to worry about with all the ACLs, with all the shares, with DFS replication if you got that going, with namespace replication as well. These tools handle it. It's fine. You can do it. Very simple to do. And I'll be showing you how to do that. Again, make sure you back up of the full server in the system state. If you're migrating also DFS as well, you have to make sure you back up your Active Directory services because there's DFS information stored in there. Make sure that you have a good report on the files, the ACLs, and other stuff. There are command line tools you can use to do that, or third-party tools to bring that up. Determine if you have the proper file services stored. On the destination, go ahead, get the OS going, join the domain, yada, yada, yada. I don't want to have to talk about it. I want to show it to you. Did I miss anything there? Oh, yes, recommendations when you're doing the migration. Generally, freeze any administrative changes to settings on DFS, on file servers, and the rest of them during the process of the migration because you capture it and then you move it until it's done. Export the settings to a temporary location and you push it down to the computer with an encrypted connection that I'll be showing you. And then you can also migrate the server name and the IP address, which I'll be doing in this demo right here. And it's all encrypted-like, so it's all secure for what you need to worry about doing. Back to this guy for my demos, and I am looking for my file and print temporary box number 1, which is this guy right here. So all he is a server core box. All he is a print server right now, so I have to load my requirements to run file and print, which is core file server. I'm hoping my Australian colleague is watching my spelling mistakes. DFSN server for name server for DFS. And the last one is my FRS for file replication services infrastructure. Okay. I'm not going to put you through the pain of modifying firewall rules from the command line with NetSH, but you can do that from this box. It is much nicer to do it from a Windows 7 box. So I've got Windows 7 installed with my RSAT tools. I've got Server Manager here, and I'm going to be connecting up to Contoso fp1t.corp.contoso.com for my destination. And then come on. Under Configuration, Windows Firewall, I have inbound rules. The migration scripts use a proprietary port you have to open up from a security perspective. So I'm going to say new rule, then I'm going to say port number, TCP based, and I'm choosing 7000, which is the default for what the tool uses. And I'm going to allow it to allow the connection. I'm going to make it apply to the domains environment, but I'm lazy, so I'm going to keep the public and private too, but I don't need it. I can take this out when I'm done. This is my migration rule. There we go. And then do the other one for the UDP connection on the same port. 7000. And then go. Allow it. Give it migration as well. There we go. So I've got the tools installed already. I've got the system all prepped and ready to go. I've got the file services loaded, and I've just opened up the ports to allow the two tools to talk to each other. The neat thing is this guy doesn't use an export and save someplace. He actually sends it specifically to an individual box. Before I get to that point, what kind of things do you normally have on file servers that are really important besides the computer name and IP address and ACLs? What are ACLs made up of? Access control lists. What are they made up of? Groups. What if there's local groups on this box? I have to be aware of that. There might be local groups that are being used. So to do that, let's go back over to my source box and make sure that I export those local groups. So here's my source box for Contoso File and Print number 1. I'm just going to go in here and start my Server Migration Tools utility. And then I'm going to go in and use the export tool to migrate out the groups and then dump me a report that I can take a look at to see how it goes. I'm going to import them in. Then the next step is go in and bring over the files and the file shares. So for this, it is export SMIG data, and I'm going to say, check my cheat sheet here. Users, all groups. I'm not moving a feature, I'm just using users and groups. The path that I want to store this at is going to be on my temporary server once again, hyper v-1 migration data local groups. This is just some terminology I came up with, verbose. Password to lock it. And it's going to store up there for collecting my data and bringing it up. This will bring all the group memberships, all the SIDs and everything else up and store inside this one area to be repopulated on the other side. Nice and fast. On the temporary side of things, I'm going to go back to my temporary guy and install them and bring them down. So here's my temporary. And I'm going to start PowerShell. Add PowerShell snap-in. And it's called Microsoft Windows Server Manager Migration. And then import SMIG data. And I'm going to say users. I'm going to say groups. And I'm going to say get it from my temporary path of hyper v1 migration data local groups and make it verbose. Password. Ugh. You gotta love command lines and a reduced screen to 2/3 of the resolution it should be. And there we go. Now, let me show you these groups that are important. A bunch of them fail because they already exist, but these guys right here, Seattle sales, New Orleans sales, they were successfully migrated. New York sales, Ottawa sales, they were successfully migrated. So those are used on my source. They've now been recreated on my destination with a local group. And I can now know that the content of them is protected and all fine and migrated over. So I've backed it up. I've loaded my services. I've done an export of my groups and users. I've done my import of my users and my groups. And everything is good to be able to go from that perspective. So how about we do the actual data migration? And the data migration is going back to the source, which is this guy right here. I'm going to be using my PowerShell migration tool to be able to do this. And I'm going to say this time, send SMIG data. And I'm going to say targeted at a computer name of Contoso FP1T. Source path that I worry about is c/data for where the data is actually stored on that server. Destination path for where to put it is going to be c/data. Yeah, that's right. Recurse all subdirectories and include everything and force any closing of files that might still be open. Whew. And he just sits there and waits. The other guy, I need to go and turn on that he's ready to receive. And so, over here, very simple. I'm just going to go and say, surprised the Aussie didn't catch that one there. So receive the data. In this case, I simply have to say, turn it on. It's going to ask me for the password, because basically the other guy is waiting for port 7000 to become active with the proper password. It's now done, waiting for the source data to transfer. Going back over to my main guy over here, he's preparing to migrate the data. And then you'll see this big massive whoosh of stuff basically go across. There's no intermediary storage that's being used. I could opt to do that if I wanted to, but then that's an extra and awful lot of I/O I got to worry about. This is something you can start. Now, obviously, if you have terabytes and terabytes of data, there are other ways of doing this kind of data migration. If you have SAN tools, if you have other tools for managing file systems and shares, Strongly urge you take a look at this. I'm showing you the poor man tools to be able to do this with the built-in stuff. Ooh, it's encrypted and stuff. Look at that. It might take excessive time. I love those dialog boxes. And there's all the validation that it all worked. You guys are catching that, right? And then take a look. CData sales, CData public, CData marketing, all that sort of stuff is basically now moved over to the other side where it happens to be. The last part is what's important for file and print servers. IP address is important? Sort of. What's more important? Full DNS names. And so I definitely want to move the name of FP1 over to FP1T on my two boxes. To do that, it's actually pretty low tech for what you got to do. I'm going to get the other guy out of the domain, change the computer name and just shut him down, and then bring the other guy in with the new computer name. It's pretty simple. So to do that, I'm just going to go in here and say change computer name on this guy just in case he comes back up again. If you could also go with a NetBIOS-based alias or a DNS alias, if CNAME if you wanted to as well as another option, that could work, but make sure you migrate the other ones as well. I'm going to call this FP old. I'm going to have to ask you just to hold the rest of the questions until the end because I'm pressed for time, sir. I need to give authorization. You don't have to. You can just rename it, but I got to get rid of the old account so that it'll work. There's the authorization. Oh, I typed it wrong. Try that again. Corp administrator password. There we go. I don't want to restart him just yet. I'm going to go in and also change his IP address, just for giggles, to 41. And I'm going to say shutdown/s/t10. Come back over here and say apply. Boom. He's now basically going to be dead in the water for all intents and purposes and basically not able to come back up again and interfere with my other guy. If I take a look back at my domain controller that's running with my server tools as an example, under Active Directory, I'm just going to browse down and take a look and make sure that that account name is all set and ready to go for it being used. And here you can see that the new guy's there and the old guy is FP1 no longer exists. It's great. So my FP1T can take that over. So back on FP1T, which is my temporary guy, sconfig. And let's go in here and change his computer name. Computer name is going to be Contoso FP1. Corp administrator for the rights. The password. I don't want to restart him just yet. I then want to go in here and say change the IP address for the first NIC to be the same as it was before. And this is going to kill my connection because I'm using terminal services client to get to it. And that basically just killed my connection. So going back over here to my core file and print server, let's bring him up here instead, just so I can finish this piece off, and then call this demo done as being my big data migration. I need to restart the box, and I'm stuck because I need to log in. Lovely. This is called on the fly. I could restart the VM, but I'm going to do it gracefully. /T5. I'll do it gracefully. So anyway, he already joined the domain. He had his computer name changed, and I just changed his IP address. That's why my terminal session died on me, and that's why I had to go in the back door to be able to go in and make him shut down nicely. But my file servers are moved. My groups are moved. My data's been received. The shares have been recreated. The ACLs have been set. All the local groups have been migrated. All the members of the local groups have been migrated. So basically, I've got the same box. It now has the same computer name. The one thing it doesn't have, actually, is the DNS entry, because I couldn't get to that point. So I'll just have to make sure I put the DNS entry on him. But to save time, remember that I didn't do that, and we'll come back to that guy in a bit, just so I can keep on moving. That's your file and print. You've got the servers renamed. The other guy's now taken down. You don't have to worry about him anymore. So what's left here? Well, post-migration, verify that it works, troubleshoot them, do your testing, roll back if you need to. None of the data left the old box. I went the step of actually changing computer names and stuff. You could still bring them back if you needed to, but you also did a backup beforehand, right? Retire the source server when you're done. There's our file server that's now done. Last is certificate services for the last 9 minutes that I have in my 75-minute session. Prepare your servers, back it up, command line stuff, be able to make the registry all happen to work, and then basically bring it back again on the new box. I've already have it installed also in Server Core. Let's take a look and see what that happens to be before we wrap this up. Here is my box for certificate services. It's actually pretty easy. Here's my certificate services box. I'm going to go in here and simply open up a command prompt and type in cert util to be able to do something. And I'm going to take a look at my templates on my certificate. C-A-T-E-M-P-L-A-T-E-S. There we go. This lists off all the templates that I have to back up. So I'm just going to go over here and say, bring them out to my Hyper-V box. Migration data, cert, templates.txt. I then need to go in and make sure that my encryption provider is not a funky encryption provider that was used. And so you can view that as well by going into here and saying get reg for my certificate authority for its encryption solution provider for the master encryption. I'm going to store that up there as well, but I'm going to call that guy there. Instead of templates, I'm going to call him my CSP settings. There we go. Store him as well. And then with the Cert Manager tool, just to show you that it's working and up and going, certificate service is something that actually really is, it is more intimidating than it needs to be able to manage and work with this guy. So you can see here it's up and working. Normally what you would do is you would extend the revocation level to make sure you can do the migration before it has to issue a new revocation. So in this case I'm doing weeks and days, which is fine. I've got issued certificates already all the way up to number 18. All I'm going to have to do is simply come over here and say all tasks and say back up my CA. Choose to back up the key and give it a location. My location of choice once again is Hyper-V -1 migration data cert, and lock it up with a password that's nice and tight that no one else knows. And then that's going to go off and dump off the stuff you need to have to that particular cert. That's now done. To make sure no new certificates are issued, simply go in here and say net stop cert svc to make sure that it is actually stopped and going. The last part you need to worry about this guy here is protecting the registry, and that is simply by running reg edit and extracting the registry key which contains critical information for your cert server. So there is current control set services for certificate services right here. I need this key right here and all this stuff and all below backed up. Right, choose that and say export. I'm just going to give it the same location as before. Hyper-V1 migration data cert. I'm going to call this guy here my reg key.reg. Save it. And it's now saved. The last step I'm going to do before I wrap this up for now is I'm going to go in here and simply uninstall certificate services on this box. By doing that, it preserves your database. It preserves your key. Again, from a backup perspective, you can bring them back if you need to. So it's not that Again, scary as it may sound for what I'm actually doing for managing my certificate services. So in 2003, I take this guy off and I get rid of him. Part of this also goes in and takes information and stores it inside the AD that says, hey, I've been removed. Let the other guy look after this, please. So I say finish. He's done and he's gone. And I'm simply going to go in here and shut him down because I don't need him anymore. Shut down. While he's shutting down, there we go. On my system, I'm going to bring up my replacement certificate server. You can't have the same server because you have to have the same name, right, for your certs to be valid. The same computer name has to be used on both systems. It has to be domain joined. So the old guy's been gone. This guy's a member server. So I've got to go in and remove the old computer account. Delete him. And then I'm going to add this other guy into my domain environment. There we go. To make him happy. So, pretty simple. I'm going to say, first of all, you know what? Let's bring all the data down to him. sconfig. Let's go in and join him into my domain. He's already called Contoso cert. Domain I'm joining is called corp.contoso.com. Administrator and password to join the domain. 3 minutes left. I'm not going to bother. You know what? I'll restart him. I don't need to do that. I'm going to go in and say restart. Yes, and bring him up. The last steps to bring this guy in is simply to go through using cert utility, restore the database, restore the registry key, and then run a command line script. There's a command line script that basically goes in and imports your templates to make sure they're still valid, and then start the service. It's literally 5 steps. In the interest of time, so I can wrap up, I'm not going to show you those last 5 steps because of where we're at right now, but it's a command line to be able to do those last 5 steps. Pretty simple. Click, click, click. So, we did the last one as well. Hopefully it wasn't too stressful like it was for me up here in front of all of you with the resolution that's going crazy. From your planning sessions, you can keep all your beautiful documentation to yourself. Celebrate, have some beer, because you just brought all your servers up to the proper level of 2008 R2, including your infrastructure. And really, it's not just me that's able to go out there and help you. It's actually you who now can go out and help other people by pointing them to this session and also by filling out your eval forms to say, amazing how he got through all those demos with 10 minutes less with resolution issues, and I still learned so much. It was fantastic. Your action plan is do your planning, test out your tools in a lab environment, seize the opportunity to change. You saw me use core. It looked ugly and crazy and nasty. It's not that bad. Jump in. 2008 R2 server core is beautiful, especially when managed with the RSAT tools with Windows 7. Don't forget your backup strategy and document your plan. All the links to all the articles that I used are in the slide deck, which you can download right now. And your resources for different things you can take a look at. I haven't even seen this part of the slide deck yet. Don't forget to fill out your other resources. Win an Xbox. There's the tag to be able to say you came successfully to the session. I apologize, but at the same time, I want to say thank you for coming through and listening and looking at this particular session with the time constraints. It was fun. I'll be around for questions, but I need to clear off for the other speakers to be able to set up and do their tech check to make sure their resolution stuff is working well. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'll be down at the server lounge and also packing up my stuff here. Don't forget the evals. I got to say, please, please, please fill out those evals. If you like this session, if you like the level of technical content in the session, you have to fill out the evals to say, Rick was awesome, this session was awesome, otherwise they don't invite us back. Thank you very much. Canada, out.